The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Patti LaBelle walked out of her own benefit concert. What happened in those seconds would change how both women saw their voices forever. This is about the moment when the student redefined what mastery means. If you love stories about artists pushing each other to greatness, hit that subscribe button now. And stick around. You won't believe what Whitney did with just one note. May 1991. Backstage at New York's Beacon Theater felt charged. The AIDS benefit concert had brought together music's biggest names, but the real tension was what Patti LaBelle had been saying for 20 minutes. You kids today with your studio tricks. Patti was holding court with younger backup singers. Auto-tune this, reverb that, punch in every note. But can you hold a note? Can you sustain for 20 seconds? Can you do what we did in the old days? Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Whitney Houston, quietly reviewing her set list. Whitney was at peak powers. I Will Always Love You wouldn't drop for another year, but she'd already conquered the world. At 37, Patti was still the queen of vocal acrobatics. But at 27, Whitney represented everything new, everything that threatened the old guard. Whitney, baby, Patti's voice carried across the room, friendly but with an edge that made everyone stop talking. You got all those hits, all those pretty songs. But can you outhold me? The room went silent. Whitney looked up from her notes, expression unreadable. Nobody challenged Patti LaBelle on vocal technique. It was like challenging Michael Jordan to a free throw contest. But there was something in Patti's smile that wasn't quite joking. The younger singers could feel it. This wasn't just playful banter. This was a line being drawn between old school technique and new school success. Miss Patti, Whitney said softly, setting down her set list. Are you serious? Dead serious, honey. Patti stood up, stretching like a boxer before a fight. Old school challenge. No tricks, no studio magic. Just lungs, just control. You pick any note on the piano and we see who can hold it longer. Clean tone, steady volume, no wavering. Whitney's manager, standing near the door, looked alarmed. This wasn't on the schedule, but before he could intervene, Whitney was already standing. What note do you want, Miss Patti? Her voice was calm, but something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, respect mixed with determination. The room had completely stopped. Makeup artists held their brushes midair. Sound engineers paused at the door. Patti smiled wider. High B flat, my favorite. The note that separates singers from vocal athletes. The note where your diaphragm either supports you or betrays you. Someone in the room gasped. High B flat was no joke. It's where Whitney's famous runs lived, but holding it steady, without movement or embellishment for extended time, that required old-school technique learned in church basements, not state-of-the-art studios. We'll need a piano, Whitney said simply. 5 minutes later, they were on stage. Word had spread through the venue. Stagehands, security, other performers. Everyone slipped into seats. 2 generations of vocal royalty, stripped down to the purest test. But the most devastating moment was yet to come. The piano sat center stage under a single spotlight. Patti on one side, Whitney on the other. The pianist looked between them nervously. Who's first? I'll show the young lady how it's done. Patti stepped forward. This was her domain. Vocal control, breath support, sustaining impossible notes honed over 3 decades. The pianist played the note, high B flat, clear and pure. It hung in the air for a moment. Then Patti began to sing. The note emerged from her like a force of nature, powerful, steady, unwavering. Her technique was flawless, a masterclass in breath control. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. The vibrato was perfect, just enough movement to keep the note alive without sacrificing purity. 14 seconds, 16 seconds. At 18 seconds, she released it, the note fading gracefully like a sunset. The room erupted in applause. 18 seconds of sustained high B flat, with tones so clean you could hear every overtone, every harmonic. It was a demonstration of everything that made Patti LaBelle a legend. Patti smiled, breathing easily despite the effort. Your turn, baby. Whitney stepped forward. She looked smaller somehow, younger. The weight of expectation settled on her shoulders. She'd grown up idolizing Patti LaBelle. Her mother, Whitney Houston, had told her stories about Patti's legendary vocal control. And now she was supposed to match it? The pianist played the note again, the same high B flat. Whitney closed her eyes. For just a moment, she looked like she was praying. Maybe she was. Then she opened her mouth and the note began. The first thing everyone noticed was the purity. If Patti's note had been powerful, Whitney's was crystalline. It had a quality that seemed to bypass the ears and go straight to something deeper. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 12 seconds. The vibrato was minimal, almost invisible, but the note was alive. 15 seconds. At 18 seconds. The point where Patti had released, Whitney didn't stop. 20 seconds. The note wasn't just being held anymore. It was being inhabited. Something was happening that nobody in that theater could quite explain. The note wasn't getting weaker. It was getting stronger. 22 seconds. Patti's smile had faded. She was leaning forward now, listening with the intensity of someone recognizing that something impossible was occurring. 25 seconds. The final 5 seconds were what broke everyone. Whitney's voice didn't just hold the note, it began to swell. The volume increased, the overtones became richer, and somehow, impossibly, she was putting emotion into a single sustained note. Pain, joy, longing, triumph. It was all there, all communicated through one held pitch. When she finally released the note at 27 seconds, the silence that followed was absolute. Patti stood completely still, her mouth open, no words. Whitney opened her eyes, glistening with tears, not from pain, but from the pure effort of proving she belonged among her heroes. Then Patti did something shocking. She turned and walked off stage, not in anger or defeat, but in stunned recognition that she'd witnessed something transcending competition. Backstage, she went to her dressing room. Her manager found her on the couch. "Patti, you're on in 10 minutes. You're headlining." She shook her head. "I can't go back out there. Not tonight. This is your show. I can't follow that." She didn't just hold it longer. She made it mean something. Every second told a story. I held a note. She held a prayer. The benefit concert went on. Whitney performed her set, and when it came time for the finale, she sang Greatest Love of All, with a rawness that hadn't been there before. 3 standing ovations. But in the wings, Patti watched with tears streaming down her face. After the show, Whitney found Patti in her dressing room. The two women looked at each other for a long moment. "Miss Patti, I'm so sorry if I—" Patti cut her off with a hug that nearly crushed her. "Baby, don't you dare apologize. You just taught me something I should have learned years ago." "What's that?" "It's not about how long you hold the note. It's about what you say with it while you're holding it." Patti pulled back, holding Whitney by the shoulders. "I've been so focused on technique, on proving I still had the power, that I forgot what the power is for. You reminded me tonight, the voice isn't a weapon, it's a messenger." Whitney wiped her eyes. "You're the reason I learned to control my voice in the first place. Everything I did tonight, I learned from watching you, from listening to my mama talk about you." "Then I guess the student became the teacher," Patti said with a smile that was genuine, warm, free of any bitterness. "And you know what? That's exactly how it should be. Every generation should surpass the last. That's not defeat, that's legacy." The moment between them lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it changed both of their careers. 3 years later, in 1994, Patti LaBelle appeared on Oprah. Oprah asked her about the greatest performances she'd ever witnessed. "Whitney Houston," Patti said without hesitation. 1991, backstage at the Beacon Theater. She held one note for 27 seconds, and in those 27 seconds, she taught me what 3 decades of performing hadn't. Technique without emotion is just gymnastics. But emotion channeled through perfect technique, that's when you touch God. The clip went viral before viral was a thing. It became part of both women's legacies. For Whitney, it was validation that she wasn't just a pop star with a pretty voice. She had earned her place among the vocal legends through pure technical mastery combined with emotional depth. For Patti, it became a turning point. She started teaching masterclasses, and her first rule was always the same. Technique gets you in the room, but what you feel is what makes people remember you were there. In 1995, the two women recorded a duet, and a cappella version of Greatest Love of All that appeared on a charity album. In the liner notes, Patti wrote, "To Whitney, who showed me that evolution isn't betrayal, your voice carries all of us forward." The impact of that night rippled through the music industry. Young singers stopped seeing vocal technique and emotional connection as separate skills. Whitney's note became legendary among vocal coaches. "Can you do 27 seconds?" became shorthand for asking if a singer had both the technical chops and the emotional depth to truly master their instrument. But perhaps the most beautiful part of the story is what it revealed about both women. Patti could have been bitter, could have dismissed Whitney's achievement. Instead, she recognized greatness and celebrated it, even when it meant acknowledging she'd been surpassed. That's not weakness. That's ultimate strength. Whitney, for her part, never bragged about the moment. In interviews, when asked about her greatest performances, she rarely mentioned it. When pushed, she'd simply say, "Miss Patti taught me everything. That night I was just trying to honor her lessons." 2 years before Whitney's tragic death in 2012, she and Patti performed together one final time at a tribute concert. Before they went on stage, Patti pulled Whitney aside. "You remember 1991? Patti asked. Whitney smiled. "Every day of my life, Miss Patti. You know what I realized recently? You gave me a gift that night." "What gift?" "You freed me. I'd been so worried about proving I still had it, about competing with every young singer, about defending my crown. You showed me that the crown wasn't worth defending. The voice is meant to be shared, not hoarded. After that night, I stopped competing and started collaborating. Best decision of my career." They hugged, these two titans of vocal excellence. And when they walked on stage together, they didn't compete. They harmonized. It was transcendent. Today, that moment in 1991 is studied in vocal programs around the world, not just as a technical achievement, but as a philosophical one. It's played for students as an example of how greatness recognizes greatness, how evolution is part of legacy, and how sometimes the most important thing a master can do is step aside and let the students show them what's possible. Patti didn't walk off that stage in defeat. She walked off in recognition that she just witnessed the future, and rather than fight it, she chose to celebrate it, nurture it, and learn from it. That's the real legacy of the 27-second note. Not just Whitney's incredible technical achievement, but two women choosing grace over competition, growth over ego, and love over fear. The night Patti LaBelle challenged Whitney Houston wasn't about who could hold a note longer. It was about what happens when legends stop seeing each other as threats and start seeing each other as teachers. In those 27 seconds, Whitney didn't just prove her vocal ability. She proved that the next generation wasn't going to destroy what came before. They were going to honor it, build on it, and carry it forward. And Patti, by walking off that stage, by choosing humility over pride, showed that true queens don't fear being surpassed. They celebrate it, because that's what legacy really means. Not holding on to your crown, but passing it to someone who will wear it even better than you did. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of grace, growth, and greatness. And comment below, have you ever witnessed a moment when the student surpassed the master? Let's celebrate those stories together.